You ready for it? Get ready, it's coming. Get ready, get ready.
All right, well, with that, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Flow State, brought to you by the Huck Finch boys, the show where we take all things Webflow and design seriously and not much else. As always, this banger of an episode is brought to you by Matt and Hein, and we're really excited to have a special guest on the show, Bill Kenney, partner and CEO of Focus Lab, which is responsible for some of the hottest brands out there. So hot that they may need some bags of ice to cool them down a bit. We're going to talk to him about his new book today, Conquer Your Rebrand, Build a B2B brand that customers love and competitors envy. But before we do that, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for future shows, and make sure you never ever miss out on the most fun you can possibly have talking about design, Webflow, and no-code dev. So let's go ahead and start the show.
Yeah, so first of all, Bill, thanks for spending some time. I said this already pre-record, but thanks for spending some time with us on this weird little show. We really appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here. I didn't know where that intro was going with the ice. Well played. Sneak attack.
It used to go nowhere. They were just true cold opens. We were like, well, that happened. So we've done a little better job tying them to something lately. But
well played.
Yeah,
it was the jingle that got me. When I picked it, I was like,
yeah,
the jingle sold me.
Real subtle in the background. I was like, that's kind of a great song about ice. So great job to them. But yeah, thanks. And also just kudos on the new book. I have a weird amount of people in my life that are actually pulling off books right now, which seems like one of the hardest things to actually do in my brain. Mm-hmm. So I'm always curious to know what actually leads to, like, I'm going to really write this book about this thing. Now's the time to do it. Was there a tipping point for you that said, like, okay, like, I think this is really going to happen. I'm going to put the sort of time and effort in that it takes.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about a lot of people writing books right now. I think I see that too. I don't know if that's because I just wrote one or if we have entered kind of like a new world where that is just more feasible. Like you can do that now. Yeah, I would say common folk like myself can actually pull that off, where I'm guessing 20 years ago that was maybe like nearly impossible if you didn't just have a huge name. So what led to it? Like, why the hell did we write it? As we've been building the agency, there's always been this like background idea of like, won't it be cool if we write a book? Wouldn't that be cool if we could pull that off? And about year 5, we considered it more seriously, but we found ourselves asking like, well, what would the content be? Who should write it in the company? Will we have the time to pull that off? And then you asked so many questions to yourself, you just realize like, I don't know. Too much effort, too many questions. Let's just get back to work. We found ourselves at the, God, let me like time check myself now. At the end of last year. So the beginning of last year. Really asking that question again and saying, okay, we have matured a lot as a business. So we're 13 years in, to be exact. And we have figured out even more since the last time we asked ourselves, should we write a book? And we thankfully felt like this is the right time. And thank God we didn't write it before, because it would have been a different book and probably not the book we would have wanted to write. So the way I'm able to pull that off, so yes, I did write the book, although there were plenty of the people on our team at Focus Lab that helped contribute to the content and helping edit it and add their perspectives and all this stuff. I was tasked and accountable to like achieving this big ass effort. I was really only able to achieve that, quite honestly, because the company is big enough that I could dedicate that type of time to it, right? So 13 years in now, I'm no longer designing things. I don't have to go to every client meeting, all these types of things that have allowed me to have more of like a CEO type of day which we can get into that or not. That I don't know if that's terribly interesting, but like on any given day, I could be pulled in any direction. But I was able to carve out the time to say like, okay, that's a huge initiative for the company. I'm tasked with doing it. It's going to be part of my calendar and it cannot be interrupted. If I was not able to do that, I don't know how I could have pulled it off. Honestly, I still put in a shit ton of time, if swearing is allowed here. It's a design podcast. It should be.
It's like maybe even encouraged.
It's required.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I checked the box. I got a little box over here. Swear a couple times. I still put in so much freaking time outside of work to do this. Every single week I was sitting on this crappy brown chair we have in our living room that needs to be thrown out at some point, and now has a version of its own legacy of I wrote the book in that chair kind of thing.
That's the book chair now. You can never get rid of it.
I still spent many nights, weekends, everything, just like harping over chapters. And so even though I was able to dedicate work time to it, I still had to dedicate personal time to it. And it took about a year. And I don't want to go too long on answering all the other questions you might ask, but that was the spawn, which is we're big enough, we're mature enough, we have a point of view, and we know what we want to write about. Get to work, write it.
Yeah. I love that. I wonder too, like, just like we're a little bit smaller of an agency and we have all these initiatives, not a book, but like, these other things of like, when are you going to not be designing? Then you're going to work on this thing. It's always a push and pull, right? But how was it like everyone else in the company knowing Bill's writing a book right now and that's one of his main initiatives? It feels like that could almost help in a way. It's like everyone like knows, at least internally, that this is sort of a thing versus just like, I'm going to write a book. Maybe my significant other and one person know about it. Then you don't have this sort of like friendly expectation maybe that something is kind of coming on that front.
Yeah, this is a big moment for the company. We want it to be a big moment for the company. And at the beginning of the initiative, the way that it landed and the timing, we had our yearly goals to present to the team. So this just became one of, let's call it 8 maybe big yearly initiatives. So it was very clearly like mapped that we would accomplish that within the year and why we were doing it. When we create those yearly goals, we give a presentation and I lead a part of that and talk about what we're doing, why we're doing it. And the book was a big part of that. So yes, I mean, we want it to be a rally moment for the team. This is not, and I'll hold it up, right? Let's plug it a little bit early. This was not a me thing. My name is on it and I'm here talking about it, but this was this is for our company. So I want the company to know what we're doing, why we're doing, why it matters. And I want them to be jacked up on it. Right.
Yeah, that's cool.
Absolutely. Let's get to a little bit about branding and having some background in that. And we both understand like the challenges with it, especially on the B2B side. And it can be just as confusing as a cat maybe trying to solve a Rubik's Cube or something. So what are some key insights from the book that really can help business leaders navigate this complexity and create a brand that does resonate with their customers?
Oh boy. All right, let me try to distill it down so all my answers are not like 10-minute answers.
Yeah. Well, we still want people to read the book, so just all teasers. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Ultimately, my hope with the book, and I think I'm seeing this be achieved by the reviews and the responses that we're getting back. My hope with the book was that I could like demystify branding to the best of my ability in the early chapters for founders that are like, I don't really know what that means. It could mean a lot of different things. I hear the word thrown out a lot, but what is it actually and how will it help me and will I get my return? So the first 3 chapters are kind of in and around that. And then I quickly transition the next 7 to 8 chapters on, okay, now what is it like to go through the process? All those efforts are really trying to make a really complicated exercise like branding attainable and practical, right? If I can just tell you in plain speak, I'm a very normal dude. I wrote the book like a normal dude, right? I didn't try to sound like overly intellectual. It's very clear that like I'm just a guy that kind of like found his way into this business, and I know some things and I just want to share it. My hope is that when people read through that, they can see that branding is a series of steps that anybody can go through if they have the right process and the right steps at the right time, and then anybody can get through it. That's ultimately like the big effort of the book. That doesn't talk about branding specifically, but that's what the book is meant to do. Yeah,
that's really cool. And this is somewhat unrelated to the book, and I think this could be an entire episode to itself, but there's a follow-up question I have to ask, which is, you mentioned, you guys have been around about 13 years-ish now, and you talked about the branding, going through these processes and these steps. If you look back in those 13 years, like, in the process and how you guys create brands, like, has there been any significant changes or developments in your process as you have gone through it and matured through the experience?
Yeah, 100%, which is why I'm glad we wrote the book now instead of 5-6 years ago, and which is why there will be new editions of the book, I don't know, every 3 or 4 years, I suspect, as new chapters I want to add or things I want to revisit that we used to do that maybe now I believe don't work anymore as the market evolves, all these things. The way that we have arrived at our process for brand is 100% organic and is really trial and error. And what I mean by that very specifically, even right now, as an example, we're at 13 years. Our clients are bigger in every way than they've ever been, which is, again, forcing us to rethink some of these processes. What works 3 years ago might not work exactly right now for a much larger client. So you have to say, oh, we should add a step. Oh, this other thing is harder for them. It was easier for smaller clients. We should rethink that. So we're always retooling. We almost came into it blank slate, no agency background. I never worked anywhere. The most design work I ever did was like in school at that point, right? So I was really learning from zero. Same with my business partner, Eric, who I started the company with, was a developer, but he had never really like worked anywhere to learn their processes that we could adapt. So we've just been evolving.
Yep. I love that. I loved the point you made a few moments ago about like anyone can do this. You had a couple of things in there, but also it's like if it's also at the right time. That strikes me as like just such a powerful thing that, like a lot of people like get excited about a branding project. And to your point on this, sounds like the early part of the book is like, what is that even? Most of the time it's whatever they were excited about when they like reached out for an engagement or had the internal talk with their team, like, we should do a rebrand. And everyone's like, yeah. And they all think 5 different things. But then that other part of like, is this even the right time? Is a conversation that we'll have on the branding front a lot, or even, if it comes from web design part first, they are often linked, especially in this day and age. It's hard to do one without the other type of a thing. But like, do you all even have the palette to like launch this brand on these things? Like, they're not thinking about a lot of those things. So that really resonated a lot. And I don't think business owners think about that at all. It might be a logo to them. It might be 900 different things that are marketing or something. Yeah. So that's a really interesting thought. And can you expand at all on the timing part of it for you?
Sure.
What that really means.
Yeah.
On your side.
And when you say timing, do you mean just overall how long kind of a brand
kind
effort
of both
will take?
Parts, right? Like, I was meaning it more broadly, even on like, when's the right time for a
Oh,
company?
interesting.
Like, what are some signals that they're even in a position to do this, like, other than like, we've got the money, whatever they think that might mean. There's so many other facets of it because branding touches every little part and parcel of a business if you're doing it correctly, right?
Yeah, so I won't use the terminology that's in the book. It would be hard for me to think of it on the spot, but I will plug the book again to say there is a specific chapter that is about this, like when is the right time? And I give very specific examples, but I can tell you more broadly, it would be different stages of companies all need it. So there's no like perfect time, if you will. Each company is going to need it for different reasons. First example might be A newer startup, seed stage, maybe even earlier than that, pre-seed, realizes, wow, we really don't look like we have our act together. How the hell are we going to go out and actually raise money? They better invest in brand to be taken seriously. At that point, you're really trying to look like you punch above your weight class. And you can use brand to do that, so people take you more seriously, even if you are still very much kind of a lightweight in the category. The next step would be, okay, we've grown past that. We're kind of like Series A to Series C. We've acquired 3 companies along the way. Our brand is a mess. We've got kind of like, because of the acquisitions, potentially you have like pods of people that are, well, this is what we used to be at our old company, and we care about these values. Oh, we care about these values. The identity system is a giant mash of crap because they're really just still trying to like go all in on product and diversify the product through acquisitions, and it just looks a mess, right? So then they have to come in and rebrand at that point. Or you have a company completely change markets, right? They might say, we're getting out of this industry, we're going to this industry. Oh, and as well, we're going to go through a name change. We might as well, and yes, they're right, consider all of the brand and what that would mean for them. So those are just a couple examples. And then there's kind of like everything in between, right? We've had clients where the brand isn't necessarily broken, if you want to think about brand as all-inclusive, but they get to a size where their logo now is running into giant trademark issues, but when they were smaller, it was off the radar, and they're like, we're going to get sued. We have to change our logo. Focus Lab will never just take on a logo exercise. At that point, we say, well, we should consider all the moving parts and what that means. So there are a variety of triggers. And I think that is also to highlight how diverse and wide-reaching brand actually is. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're going to get sued is like a really, really strong
That's a
one.
very easy one
like,
to
maybe
follow.
Maybe we should engage somebody.
Yes. Yeah. In that example, that was a big company. They were already like a Series C. So I don't know at what point that mark, if you will, finally hit that, hey, you're big and you're problematic and we're going to sue you. Here's your letter. I don't know why they wouldn't have gotten that earlier. But yeah, that's okay, we got to get to work. There's no gray
it's
here.
Interesting, like there are cases where things like that like sneak way longer than you could ever imagine, and then like someone on Twitter is like, "Don't worry about trademarking; it just gets in the way," and it's like, well, it does until it doesn't. Like it's like you just haven't had that call yet, type of a thing. So yeah, it's always funny like seeing those bits of advice. It's like you're kind of right, but also like it's a big problem.
It's a very big problem. Yeah.
Like it's not like you get an email and you exchange, a nice email thread and work it out. Like those are problems you don't want. So
seatbelts are overrated. You're more likely to get killed by a shark.
yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we just slowly became insurance salesmen there for like 1 minute. We're like, yeah, wait till the earthquake comes.
I wanted to kind of the next question. It's kind of a follow up to that comment when you kind of made where Focus Lab doesn't just take on logo projects. And I think like when a lot of people hear the word brand, the first and only thing they think of is a logo. And so they kind of fail to understand how big of a world a brand is. How do you all, when you first like working with your customers, help them understand the concept better so they understand exactly what it is they need, and even it's things that they probably didn't realize, like, oh my God, we didn't even think about this as part of the brand, or we need this thing.
Yeah. I would say, thankfully, most of our clients now get it. The companies are large enough, and the people that are tasked with finding the agency and really driving that effort within the organization understand what brand is and what the company needs. Because at that point now, for us, they're generally chief marketing officers, VP of this, VP of that. So they have a general understanding. That doesn't mean in the background, though, the CEO might still have their greatest desire hinged on the logo, right? That world is still very real and happens. When we are tasked with trying to help somebody understand, which really happens in the sales process, not in the project, help somebody understand that it is bigger than what they are currently thinking. You know, you get into kind of all the things that we've all heard a lot, which are all true, which is like, you know, the brand is the overall experience that the customer is going to see, feel, and experience in dealing with your product. It's not just a logo. It is also the words you use, the values you live by, you know, all the million, the list goes on and on. So it's education. To answer your question, like just educating them a lot on what it actually is and what it isn't. We talk a lot about, you know, brand is like an orchestra of instruments. It's not just the violin. It's, you know, let's check my instrument knowledge now, right? It's like the piano.
You need 5 quick instruments.
Yeah, quick. This will really pigeonhole me, like bass guitar, regular guitar, drum set. Oh, this guy listens to rock music.
7 different kinds of guitars.
Yeah. So I didn't give you exacts there, but maybe let's do some exacts. What would a brand be if we think about Nike? What is Nike's brand? Well, it's certainly not just the damn check mark, right? None of us think that Nike's brand is the check mark. Me personally, when I think about the Nike brand, I actually think about the social positions that they take on certain topics and how kick-ass they align that within their advertising. That's what I think about the Nike brand, is almost like a force to be reckoned with. And yes, a sports apparel company. You might think differently about Nike. You could be, we're all nodding our heads, but you could actually dislike Nike because of those things and what their brand represents. But either way, they stick to their brand. So maybe that's the point to say. It's certainly not the logo. Apple's brand is not what could seemingly be a very easy logo for any of us to create within 10 minutes. Apple's brand is not that thing either, right? It's the cajillion iPhones that are all in our hands right now. It's people that are going to spend $3,000 for a eye mask that they probably don't need.
Yep. We're all in that phase where like, yeah, no one's ever going to buy that.
Right. Yeah.
They probably will.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
There's a market. It's the same as this, right? Like
exactly.
You know, is Apple going to dominate the watch industry? Oh, yes, they did within like no time.
Yeah, and is that vertical worth more than like almost every other company? Just the watch or just the AirPods? Yeah.
And how do they do that? It's brand, because we believe in the company. We believe that the product that we're going to get from them is superior. I don't know that Apple is the type of company where you align to their values necessarily, but maybe like a Patagonia is, right? Save the planet. I'm going to buy stuff from Patagonia versus somewhere else that might be less expensive. That's where brand comes in. Logos don't do that shit. Feelings, emotions, values, stories do that. There you go. There's the better answer. Cut that up however you want.
We'll work around that. We only put the best words in.
We eventually got there.
We got there.
Roundabout.
It's interesting. Certainly Apple, definitely in certain areas fits into this, but Nike is a good one that maybe leads in the next question. We're like in a world of like, you know, this has been true for a while now, but still certainly the case of like being a viral sensation in some way and like how that connects the brand. Like virality often doesn't last very long, but it has to live somewhere within a brand. When you mention Nike, like, I think that they're great at that on the advertising front. Like, I think of Nike in the same way you described it, where it's just like, yes, they do take these stands, but like their commercials and their ad campaigns that go right alongside that are incredible. Like, often their ads will go viral, like even in a way where like you don't even see that full ad again. It's on like the Super Bowl or something. They're just like, here's a small film basically around an athlete, around that kind of thing. But yeah, just thinking about virality in terms of brand is such, like, as we talked about, this huge thing, but they're also now in the social media kind of where it's like, you have to strike in these moments as well, or find ways to have these kind of lightning moments that stick out in the zeitgeist and, like of fake news and all this type of stuff. But like, we have this like keeping it real, authentic kind of thing that a lot of people probably bring up for you all when they're talking about brand as well. Everyone wants to be authentic, but it's like authenticity isn't really anything by itself. It's like authentic to what? Like what is, what's the next question? Nike, I think we're saying like does a really good job with that. Do you have any thoughts on, like you have these lightning strike moments within this great big thing of a brand and like cutting through the noise,
For people that are listening that are thinking about brand and building brand, I don't think it's important for them to try to build necessarily lightning strikes per se. That's not to say that those are bad. I think that those are a result of a really clear intentional brand, right? So it starts at the foundation, and then the next step from that would be staying true to that consistently for decades on end. And then in that cycle of brand life, you have particular strikes, but you don't need them to succeed, if that makes sense, right? Like you're like climbing the small steps, and the way you climb those with brand is you just beat the same drum and you beat it and you beat that drum and you're just always hitting the same note and you're hitting the same note, and then that will be burnt into people's brains. That's going to be the most important step, because if you're all over the damn place and inconsistent and people can't understand you and you don't feel like you're aligned to the values of your brand, those lightning strikes won't matter, right? Those are just kind of like, okay, you were one hit wonder type of music versus, hey, let's go back to music. Metallica, you could love the band and hate an album, and some of those albums could be lightning strike albums. You still favor them as a brand because they've stayed consistent. Side note, I just took my son to Metallica 2 months ago in MetLife Stadium. It was epic. We did 2 days, and that's why it's on my brain.
And can you name every instrument?
Yeah,
bass guitar, regular guitar, drums.
just a music podcast. In opposition to the advice you just gave, like one episode, they're like, wow, these guys do not take advice well. But I love the music analogy though on the album front though, because like even as I talked about Nike, at least for me, it's like I wasn't really even thinking about one particular commercial. It was just like they do this thing that has this feeling, over and over, like, from Michael Jordan days all the way until now with countless different athletes and social causes or whatever it might be. And they all sort of feel like
it's consistent. Correct. Yes, it never really feels like they took a big departure from themselves. And
which is incredibly hard.
Yeah, when a company can do that, it allows them to miss the mark here and there, and it's not a big deal, right? Nike could drop an ad tomorrow that is still powerful but doesn't resonate with us particularly, and we're not going to like discard the brand because of that, because we know one of those ads is going to slap for us and we're going to be like, damn, that thing crushed.
Sorry, I was going to say too with the Nike thing that, yeah, it's like there are definitely some memorable ones that I saw, like an And One documentary, and they were ruling the street ball world, and then they said the moment they lost was when Nike dropped their street ball commercial with like Rasheed Wallace and all those dudes just dribbling the ball, doing really cool things, and they were like, that was it, that was the end, that was the end of And One. It was just crazy that these guys could just say that. They're like, they just saw a commercial, like that's the end of us.
Yeah, and they're doing that because they're leading with story, and they're pulling at like heartstrings and emotion. They're not saying, look at the foam we put in the soles of these sneakers, right? Like nobody gives a shit about that. They want to be told a story and a narrative, and they're really good at that.
Yeah, I think with them too, in particular, is that like having that like clear-cut brand and how they do things. I think that probably helps them with like rolling things out quickly too, because like it's very just. I immediately think of like when the Nuggets won the championship. Like immediately they rolled out like a little small ad about Nikola Jokic. They put up that big banner. Immediately, I think it said like no joke, and he's like holding the trophy. It's like that's like you have to have like some like
framework,
some framework to know exactly like this is what we're gonna roll out right away. It's gonna get approved. It's gonna happen, and like this fits the brand.
like 2 months prior, someone came up with that no joke line. They're like, yeah, that's gonna hit.
Yeah, I think we're kind of talking about like these successful brands and kind of just like, I think we kind of have a sense of like what it kind of looks like. But I would really like kind of love to ask, like, while numbers and charts can be as thrilling as watching paint dry, like how would you recommend brands like measure the success of their rebrands? Like any tips on, even if it's like charts and stuff like that, like any tips on how they can make these like fun and exciting, like riding a roller coaster so they don't feel so dry and boring?
Yeah, the ROI of a rebrand is often a really challenging subject. Also why there's a chapter on that in the book. And in that, I talk about things that companies don't generally consider as a direct ROI. They're thinking bottom line revenue, right? Did we make more money net at the bottom or not? And it's like, well, like we've talked about in this episode, like that takes time too, right? Like you're not just going to see that in the first year necessarily. Nike has continued to compound on its brand. They see it now. They certainly know it now. Did they know it in year 5, 7, when the first campaign that was epic, whatever year that would have been? Did that really draw all the sales, or did it 7 campaigns later, which needed the first campaign to drop, start to drive those sales? So it can be really hard if you only focus on like dollar bills. So we try to help people consider the immediate impacts that they will see, which is going to be internal alignment and effectiveness within their company, right? So even if you don't see the dollars yet, is your team morale, sentiment better? And what we see is it often is, right? It's a little bit of a new rally cry, or a lot of bit of a new rally cry for some companies, when this new brand comes out and they're like, oh, yes, we as a company finally know who we are and we can all say it. If I'm smushed in the corner of an elevator and someone asks me, well, who do you work for and what do they stand for? I finally know the answer. Like the value of that is almost immeasurable, right? Like how do you measure somebody's efficiency within their job and how that goes up? I don't know, but I can tell you it does. We've had clients come back to us immediately with sentiment from their team to say, and this would be design specific, those designers within the organization saying, I'm having so much more fun at my job now that I have this new system that makes sense and I'm really like crushing it. Like, how do you measure that? To dollars? You can't, but it is valuable, right? So then you put that on a greater scale. What we also see, going back to the point on the startups, right? Like, so these startups need brand to be taken seriously to raise new capital. A lot of our past partners continue to raise and achieve what they're trying to achieve, all the way up to acquisitions and IPOs. Can we pin that it was us to that? No, and we would never want to do that. But in the book, again, in one of the earlier chapters, I talk about the work that we did with a company called Braze. And I very clearly create a line to say, we worked with them here. They're now a public company that continues to crush. The earnings report just dropped yesterday that crushed again. I'm not going to say what percentage of that effect we created. I'm not even that bold. But if we only created 1% of that effect, and then I take the value of their company now, which is in the billions, at 1% it's this. And then I say, I can tell you they paid a fraction of that for the rebrand. So whether you can get apples to apples alignment, I'm trying to tell people that doesn't matter. I'm telling you the numbers will be so big that you will have no doubt that you got a return. So culturally, yes. Raising new capital, yes. Being taken serious and being able to take your competitors' customers as you stand out as a better, stronger player in the crowd. And then ultimately the bottom line. But the bottom line takes more time.
I love that. I always think of the alignment word that you used, or alignment or clarity. And I do think that people understand that, especially in the executive room, and how that has a compounding effect. So it's sort of like you have a straighter line to do anything now. And there's so much easier for each part of your business to gain momentum. It's a lighter lift, even if it's not a light lift, it's lighter. And that's how I just always think about that when you're explaining it too, is just like, you can't really put a number on designers being excited to do their work. But as designers, we know exactly what that means and what that doesn't. And that's true of marketing and sales and other departments too, even down to that tiny little elevator conversation. It's like the most palpable little moment where you're like, what do you do? Or what does your company do? And you're like, well,
yeah,
like,
bang, you've already lost the game, right?
Paper
yes.
in the basket. And then it's like, that's the worst feeling. Not even just in a pitch room, right? But if you're just a single employee, like trying to explain, especially in tech or something.
Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. You work for like a big data company, right?
Yeah, you've seen widgets before. We're those guys.
Yeah, I think what something I got from your answer to that question too is like, there's the presumption that they like whomever is getting the rebrand, and whether it's done by Focus Labs or whomever, that the product is actually good, right? So like, and like that's and I think that's like, that can't go without being said, because like, while they're looking for an ROI on the brand, like they have those to recognize, like if you don't have a good product, we might be able to get some of this initial interest because you have this new cool brand, but if the food doesn't taste good or if the product doesn't work, like no matter how awesome this brand is, you're not gonna ultimately see an ROI, because like you're not gonna create these fans. People aren't gonna love the brand ultimately. So I think like it's in a way that it's somewhat unfair. Like even with like websites for us, it's like again, you have to if your product is not good, you have to deliver on your side. Like we deliver on ours, but you got to deliver too. Like it's 100% commitment.
Just had a slightly better logo type. I think it probably would have really worked out.
Yeah. So let's move into our nugs. So we have a couple of nugs questions here for you, Bill.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about, like how to make it go right and kind of come from that angle of the branding exercises. But what are a couple mishaps or like things to definitely avoid if someone's kind of asking, like what are and maybe pitfalls is even a better word. It's like, how do these things most often go off the track?
Yes. So I'll speak from my experience within our process. So this might not be true for everybody, but for us, some of the biggest pitfalls in the process would be, first and foremost, if the company is not aligned around the rebrand. And what I mean by that very specifically is, we've got the project started. We are working with the CMO or the VP of marketing, only to find out 2 weeks in, they're still trying to get the CEO really on board with the idea that they are really going through a rebrand. Obviously there must have been some version of okay because they have signed a contract and they've started, but you find out that there's still a separation. They are not shoulder to shoulder like, yes, let's go. That really makes for a very fumbly start to the project. We have to do a lot of project management and like client education, client alignment. That's pretty time intensive and that can be pretty exhausting, quite honestly. So having a team come in with full alignment of why they're doing it and that they should be doing it really sets you in the right direction. The next pitfall would be, I guess my brain goes right to one of the bigger ones, which we've kind of touched on a little bit, which is the project starts to hinge around a logo. That seems to be inevitable in a large majority of projects. You either break out of that mindset pretty quickly by education and teaching the client and reminding them, or you're stuck in that cycle for a little bit and you got to like power through it. That is definitely a pitfall. The better a client understands that a rebrand is not simply about a logo, and better yet, it's not about the founder or the CEO personally loving the logo, the smoother and better a rebrand goes, right? It's about the customer. Who gives a shit what I think about the Focus Lab logo. It doesn't matter. Having said that, it was still really challenging for me. It was hard for me, even knowing what I know, to separate those two emotions. The final pitfall, for the sake of time, I'll just keep it to 3, would be getting to the end of the project and not realizing, this was kind of hinted at in the beginning of the episode, not realizing how much more work is left. And by that, I mean the rollout. Rollout is a very delicate dance. You want to roll out internally first. You want to create the rally cry. The internal rollout is very different from the external rollout. The internal rollout is very team and culture focused and carries a different weight and even delivers a different presentation in our point of view. Then the external rollout has a different voice and a different presentation. And then updating all the crap. Right, there's so much stuff to update that you're not going to update in the rebrand. I think sometimes clients come in and they think like, oh yeah, cool, okay, 3 months as a generic timestamp. We'll get through this and then we'll be launched and then we can get on to our next initiative. It's like, ooh, actually like 3 months to driving the car out of the driveway. There's still a lot of driving left though, right? Like we got to update all these legacy assets. I mean, that's not even getting into web. Right, that's a humongous lift, and really that is hard to do in parallel, which we can get into or not. Really, those need to be offset. There can be some overlap at the back end of brand and the front end of web, but for us, doing all of that in parallel is rough. So yeah, that would be the final pitfall I would call out. Be ready for more work, and try to enjoy it and embrace it. Really, it doesn't mean it's bad.
Right. Yeah. Well. Yeah, those are really kind of great ones, and it's like almost like you read our minds, like because the final Nugs question relates to web because us being web guys. What are some tips on how to like translate the brand to web? Like, so it sounds like doing them simultaneously. Unsurprisingly, not a great idea. But what are some other tips?
It's a great way to piss off designers.
Yeah, there's just too much change happening, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's like you're making a soup and you poured one ingredient in, water. You're like, hey, start building with this. Make your soup. You're like, I don't have anything to build with. It's just water. You're like, okay, yeah, cool, I got you. I'm gonna put in, whatever the little salt cube thing, the bouillon cube. All right, now try it. Doesn't really taste like soup yet. Tastes like flavored water. Okay, you don't need to go through all that shit. Let me get the soup almost to the end, so you have an idea of where I'm headed, and you can start building off of that. So the way that we do it, because I would say, and it is appropriate to understand, clients also don't want to take a whole year, right? They don't want to spend 3 to 4 months on the brand work only, and then have a very clear separation date to then web, which could take a very long time if it's a big website. So we do try to overlap, which would be, we've got kind of like I insinuated with the soup metaphor. You get most of the stuff done, and we're putting that in front of whoever the web team would be to be like, here's the assets we believe you need now. There's certainly work that can be done on web structurally and content-wise. Start thinking about all that stuff while we're shoring up. And then we kind of stay along for a little bit too. And what we do more specifically is we will build out a few of the key pages and then basically say, we've given you our version of the vision as it translates to web. That should remove even more friction. We're not going to design or develop a website in full. Take this now and run. And that seems to be working really well. I don't know if that is ideal for people like you. I don't know if you would love getting a full homepage already designed from a company and you would want to be able to put your hands on that too. But it does remove a lot of the like, well, I wouldn't have done it that way. Maybe you should have done it this way. That kind of initial ramp up that needs to happen. So yeah, maybe that answers the question.
It does, yeah. I think
it does, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like the nice aspect of it in order to get that, that vision and being able to kind of like you said, like play with it a little bit too, like you said, like getting that bowl of that pot of soup and like, now change it up to your spice level or whatever what you want to do with it to.
Yes, perfect.
So I do love that idea that there's this vision and there's kind of like that excitement of being able to bring that to life, which is very, I would say, on par with the idea of us coming up with a vision and bringing that to life. So yeah, it has its own challenge, which is I think the exciting part.
Yeah, I think too, like you kind of were like, I don't know if you guys would want that from the seats that we sit in. I think, maybe because we have spent a lot of time on the brand side as well, I would never want to like throw that out at all. You know what I mean? It's like, it's almost for me, I would be like, if I don't want this, it's like kind of an ego thing, or I have a different idea of what I think their like brand values should look like. It's like, that's not really my job. It might feel more exciting for that to be my job, but that kind of work that goes into all the decisions that amount to that homepage, it's like, my choice shouldn't be whether I want that or not. I don't think it should be like, hey, do I want to do all of that work again? Put them through, because that's what I'm saying is like, I have a better idea at a glance than came out of 4 months of building that. And I think, I do think it'd be easy for a designer to be like, yeah, cool story, bro, on the like the homepage design, right? But I do think that would be maybe not doing your job as a designer to have that kind of look at it. It's like you might even have a great idea and maybe that's part of where you start, but to sort of like dismiss it, I think is sort of like, I don't think you're like understanding the assignment totally.
Yeah, I think you're smart to call out ego. I think it would be that. Sure, do we all want to have our crack at designing the thing so we can really go buck wild and like flex our design models? Sure, yes, but like be careful of ego, because really we're all servicing the client. So what is 100%. The best service to the client?
Right.
Sites are great for like doing all of your new animations.
yeah.
It's like flex that in your portfolio. Most clients are going to be like, whoa,
yeah,
no thanks.
Yeah. We've all probably have had the experience of someone with no context coming in the middle of something and be like, why are we doing it this way? It's like, well, if you've been around, you would have known. And like the last thing I think Matt or I want to be is like, we want to be those guys. Like, why are we doing it this way? It's like, with no context at all.
Yeah.
Like, let's go ahead and just blow it up.
I was going to say, it'd be a hilarious exercise to get like a short creative brief and just like give it to a designer, and it's like a very famous company, and you just like just go nuts. And then you're just like, they reveal the company. It's like, it probably wouldn't be like super close.
Oh yeah, correct. Correct.
Yeah, it might look cool, but you'd just be like, oh, that's Kroger. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't think that was Kroger. All right. High design website.
Kroger, are you guys in the South? That's a very particular brand you called out there.
No, it's up here.
Oh, is it?
Oh,
I didn't know that.
It's in Michigan. It's like Ralph's in the West, I think.
Okay.
Right? Is that
I've only seen Kroger in the South when I lived down there. That was it.
Interesting. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know the Kroger thing. So,
that's another note of wisdom right there.
Stay tuned for us redoing Kroger's e-commerce website for no reason.
Another note of where Kroger is located. So we've come to the end of our questions. So we're going to open a can where you get to open a can of shameless plugs as a thank you for being on the show. So it's all yours, Bill.
Oh boy. All right. So the easy one, because I have the book, is here. Yes, I wrote a book. Yes, we talked about it a lot. It's called Conquer Your Rebrand. You could go to conqueryourrebrand.com. We did get that. To order the book, to learn more about the book, but you can also just go to Amazon. Just go straight to Amazon. You order it there. Paperback you can get like the next day. Hardcover it takes maybe a week or two, because they basically print them on demand. I'm not some big Malcolm Gladwell author. They don't have 100,000 in a warehouse somewhere.
Yeah.
It's not off camera to the right.
Honestly, I don't know what else I would plug. Maybe I'll just say some things that I think people should think about within the industry. How about that? I think that I'll call myself a designer in this episode, even though I don't design anymore. I think we designers need to be careful of ego. It was touched on here. I'm saying that to say what I've come to realize over time is it is not about the quality of design work that you deliver. It is the quality of the care and the experience and the education and those types of things that you deliver to the client. If you can do that well, you will really rise through the ranks and you will stand out among your peers, and you will be a huge standout to the clients that you serve. I would plug on that note though. So at Focus Lab, here, I'll hold this up. At Focus Lab, we have this mantra of sauce. And this is our actual sauce that we deliver at the end of a client project to say, thank you for working with us. Here is our actual hot sauce that is like locally made in Savannah, Georgia, which is where our office used to be. We have no office anymore. I'm sharing that because sauce at Focus Lab means seek to achieve an unforgettable customer experience. That's the acronym of sauce. And right there highlights the point I just made, which is that is the most important thing that we care about at Focus Lab, which is the customer experience. It is easy for all of us as designers, writers, strategists, whatever your craft is, to care mostly about the craft. How can I make the best pixel perfect site? How can I make the best pixel perfect logo and write the best words and come up with the best creative strategy? That's a tall task, and I don't think that's a fight worth fighting. There's so many talented people out there. You're going to try to be the best of that. Like, good luck, dude. Like, that's going to be rough. I think it's actually achievable to be the most caring, people-focused, customer-centric designer, writer, and strategist. That's actually achievable for a lot of us. So that's not a plug for us, even though we live by sauce and ship actual hot sauce. I just felt like that was worth sharing because I don't know that everybody thinks that way. And I'm not trying to convert people that don't. I'm trying to enlighten people that haven't considered that it is not just about pixels and words. You got to be a human, right? Clients are coming into this shit and they're scared. They're confused. They don't know what is what, and they're looking for you to guide them. You don't guide people with pixels. You guide them with the experience. The pixels are just the outcome of the product at the end. So maybe that's just another nugget. Maybe that's probably the better nugget of all the nuggets.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's you opened a nice can of nice box of like nugs there, and I really love that you mentioned that, and also we need to get our hands on that hot sauce.
I can ship you some. I can ship you some.
That'd be awesome. But yeah, I think like what you're saying is like so true because like at some point like it becomes indiscernible to the client that whether this logo is at 80% of your capacity to 85 to 90% because like at that point it's like it just becomes like what's the difference here? It's like the 4K to 8K TV. It's like I don't know the difference. Like why am I paying for the 8K? Like I don't want that. Like I just 4K seems fine enough kind of thing. So like you said, like rather than investing in that extra, try to get to that next notch up that someone's not going to notice. Like how can you reinvest that time and energy in a place where they are going to notice it? And like you said, it is that customer care and giving them that really great experience that they will love and want to keep working with you.
They will appreciate that more.
We appreciate it. Recommend you like freely. It's just really great to hear that.
Yeah, it's sort of like one of those like eat your vegetables comments like that we just like don't do. But it's like I definitely think there was, it takes a few years at least, I think, to really get, or at least for me, even what you just said. It's like you sort of know that you're like obviously customer experience, but like you're trying so hard to become the best designer that you can, which is not exactly what your job is. It sounds like what your job is, but that's just skill building, like getting better, building your taste and things like that. But that's not exactly what you're selling to the client, or at least in their eyes, right? Like they'll say, yes, give me the best design you can do. They have no idea what that means any more than they usually know what a brand is, like we've talked about the whole episode. So it takes some reps sometimes. So listen to Bill on this one if you're early on, especially because I think it's important what you said about rising through the ranks. Like that's how you separate yourself. Otherwise, you're waiting for everyone else in the world to appreciate high design as much as a designer does. And that is maybe impossible.
Yeah, right. Don't chase the impossible task. especially if you're not going to get the return you're looking for. I think you both captured it well. And the reason I said it is because I want people to learn and adopt that earlier. I think that will naturally come and does for all of us. It takes a long time, though, to realize it on your own. And I'm trying to embed that early. Don't worry about that shit. It is undiscernible at some point. I cannot tell the difference between 4K and 8K. Maybe the 4K TV, maybe the remote is like better and actually works. And the 8K TV, they spend so much time making 8K, the remote sucks, right? Like you have to think about those things. It's no different than when a builder, if he comes to my house, if I get the builder that only cares about craft, every idea I throw out there, he's like, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. You don't know anything. I'm a craft expert. You should never do that. And I'm like, at least enlighten me and like have a conversation. Like at least like
I just feel bad
help me
now.
be a part of the process, because you can tell it seems like I need that to feel better. So just help me be that.
Yeah. I tying it all together with the music thing. Like I just think of like pretty much every musician goes through it. Every artist, like we already kind of said, like Miles Davis starting just bebop, just every note possible. How could I fill up every space with music, like a note, like as much note as possible? And he finally got to that point. He's like, if I could just play this one note, like as great as I can play, as good as I can play, with all the emotion I can play, like that's infinitely better than me playing a million notes in one. And it's kind of like, I think it very much connects to all this. It's like, you don't have to kind of fill it all up. Like just do it well, know you're doing it well, and then commit to this other part of it, which is the customer service, which is at the end of the day, like why we do what we're doing, right? I think we're trying to serve these people.
We are in business.
It is a service,
if we're doing
first word,
Yeah,
based
exactly.
business.
Exactly. But if I productize it, is it still? No, I don't. It's still the same.
All right. Well, I think we could keep talking with you forever, Bill, but I think we want to respect your time, and we'll call it here. That's it, everyone. Another banger, a banger of all bangers. Mucho caliente. Not enough bags of ice to cool it down. We want to thank our amazing guest, Bill Kenney, whom we hope to bring back regularly on the show. In between everything else that he's juggling, we would love to have you back, especially to be on our Money and Me series, talk about the money side of things, and just how to
Blast.
Hell yeah.
That should be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you again so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. It was a great episode. Before we go, we just want to thank everyone who actually is watching and tuning into Flow State. Hi, Mom. Your support means the world to us. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe. It matters. There's a reason we all say it on these things. Please subscribe. Share it with any other designers. Even just this episode on focused on branding, I think, can help any business, not just designers. It's such an important part. Everyone should be thinking about it. So share that around. Buy Bill's book. In the meantime, we'll be back with more premium content, talking about design, Webflow, branding, all this good stuff. So subscribe, like right now, and don't miss the next drop. So until next time.
All right.